While we remain in the dead period of the NBA offseason, there is beginning to be a little hope on the horizon for basketball coming soon, as the NBA has dropped all schedules for each team, including the Philadelphia 76ers, who with Paul George under the wing and completing the best trio in basketball, will officially step into center stage. I want to break down the most notable takeaways from the schedule, as well as what Dr. J had to say about his role in recruiting Paul George to the Sixers team. Spoke on an earlier video at kind of the comp for Tyrese Maxey, what Dr. J had to speak so glowingly of Maxey and his future. But now I'm going to take a look at his angle for how Paul George fits in, as well as a little breakdown for the schedule, what to expect, the strength of schedule, and everything else that you do need to know about the biggest games. Now, before I do dive fully into it, do just want to take a quick break here to get a word from our sponsor. I'll be right back on the other side.
Listen, guys, we all have bad habits, and sometimes the easier they are to access, the harder they are to break. That's why I wanted to introduce you to our new friends over at Fume, who are a flavored air device with no nicotine, no vapor, and completely non-toxic flavors. If vapor is the sticky soda in your body, then Fume is like the herbal tea. Fume is backed up by doctors in the USA and also continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their product. There have been over 300,000 customers thus far, and you could be the next success story. With flavors like crisp mint, orange vanilla, raspberry lemon, and plenty more, there is truly something for everyone. Whether you desire that oral fix, the need to fidget, or just like the award-winning flavors, Fume could be for you. Fill the void in a natural, guilt-free way, as our Philadelphia sports teams give us plenty of reasons to worry about our own health already. For a limited time, use my code DIGEST to get your free topper. It's the perfect accessory to your Fume device. Slip it onto the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's chewable for those of you who like to fidget, and it's reusable. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code DIGEST, or scan the QR code on your screen right now to get your free Fume topper when you order your Journey Pack today.
So once again, shout out to Fume for sponsoring the video here, and shout out to you guys for tuning in, and shout out to the NBA for giving us a little bit to talk about, as we do have the full schedule breakdown. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not going to go game by game through each of this, but there are some notable takeaways that I do want to dive into. And shout out to Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Points and Philly Sports Network for simplifying things here. And he breaks down that the Sixers have 27 national TV games this year, which I love, seeing them step to center stage. They are going to be the forefront of the national attention, which they deserve to be with the caliber of talent that is on this roster. They do have 15 back-to-backs, which is something that I do not like, and we'll touch a little deeper on. 2 road trips of 6 straight games, including a couple early West Coast trips that is traditionally not the case for the Sixers team, so a bit of a surprise there. 19 home weekend games, and 1 homestand of 6 straight games, which comes in late January and into early February. Also highlights that every one of these Sixers matchups versus the Celtics and the Knicks will be on national TV, with them having 4 games against each team there. Now, I don't take a lot of weight in kind of these breakdowns here. I think it is difficult to fully get into, but to look at the strength of schedule breakdowns, this has per Tankathon the Sixers at 24th, meaning that they have the 6th most difficult schedule, which is not entirely surprising there.
Listen, guys,
now,
we all have.
I do think that those are a little bit of a flawed for the breakdowns. For example, what if you're playing a team who does not have their star player that night? Those are kind of a little variables that you cannot fully get to. For example, what if the Sixers end up playing the Denver Nuggets during a stretch in which Nikola Jokic can't play, or the Bucks in which Giannis can't? Much different from a team that will play them right off the opening whistle. And by the way, the Sixers have the Bucks' first game this season. So my point being that there are some flaws in this. I wouldn't take that too heavily, but there is good reason for the Sixers to have the 6th highest strength of schedule in the league. Because if you are to zoom out and take a look at what the national perception are, take a look at the championship odds, that at times I think I get too Sixers vision just looking at the Sixers team. Got to take a step back and look at the rest of the league. But to take a look at what Vegas thinks here, they're talking about the Sixers as the 5th best chance of winning the championship according to the Vegas odds there. Them just trailing the Boston Celtics, who of course are the defending champs. And by the way, probably hungrier group to return and secure another championship than we've seen in quite some time. When you think about what has gone down this offseason, with Jaylen Brown being disrespected, being left off Team USA, Jason Tatum, of course, not getting the proper role that he expected or many people expected with Team USA, they're going to be a team that is ready to still prove some people wrong. Jason Tatum, probably the only guy that I've ever seen who won a championship and seemed to have, his perception go down slightly. So I do think the Celtics will be hungry next year, but we know how hard it is to repeat. Then beyond that, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I do think are legitimate. We're seeing that group grow up real fast. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the real deal by every definition of that, and that's going to be a fun team to watch, who took even more of a step forward by bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso this offseason. The Thunder are going to be the real deal in the West. Then the New York Knicks at number 3. This I disagree with. That I just think that their ceiling is much lower than is being acknowledged. I don't want to call it a fluke what they did last year, but I do think that there is a bit of a ceiling to being the team that just tries harder than others. And for a guy like Jalen Brunson, who is the real deal, and a guy who is cold-blooded, I just think it's really hard to win with a team constructed around an undersized guard, because every bucket that he gets, and he gets plenty of them, he has to work so hard for it. And when you think about the grueling stretch that it takes for an entire championship, a championship run, that's just a lot to put on one guy. And I think bringing in a dude like Mikal Bridges doesn't change things entirely for that roster. So personally, I'm not afraid of the Knicks in the way that many are, and I understand how things went south last year. But with Paul George, I think it's going to be a different story this season. Then the Denver Nuggets, who I still think you got to give your respect to there at the 4 spot. And then the Sixers at number 5 there. Looking right behind them, they do have the Dallas Mavericks there, Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Milwaukee Bucks down in the 8 spot there. Now, to talk a little bit more about this Sixers team, I'm really optimistic about what this big 3 brings. And we got that from Dr. J himself as well. I already highlighted on the channel him speaking so highly of Tyrese Maxey, but he asked a little bit about his role in the pitch to Dr. J. I believe this was Sam DiGiovanni and Zach Chavalella of Philly Sports Network who had a chance to sit down with him at the opening of the park, which is a great thing that the Sixers did. And to get their exact quote from what we got from Dr. J, said the role, and this written from Sam here, said the role Irving played in the entire plot to land George was small, he admitted, but his connection with the veteran star proved to be the cherry on top. Quote, well, I think most of the work was done before I got there, but when I was called in, it was to help put the final stamp of approval on, Irving said after the court opening ceremony, and to meet him and his family, him and his wife and mom and dad, and spend a little more time in their house and talk a little bit about Philadelphia, my experience in Philadelphia. I think he enjoyed that, and I think he's going to respond very well to it, as well as his family responding very well to it. Irving said he thought George was very receptive to his pitch. Indeed, the newest Sixers star talked giddily about the hosting the great Dr. J at his house. Now, he'll see him on the sidelines plenty of times, cheering him on as he and his teammates strive to meet Irving's team on the NBA mountaintop. And it is cool kind of how much this hits home for Paul George. He talked about Julius Irving being a huge favorite of his father growing up. And when you talk about the timelines, that Moses Malone very much being a missing piece that joined Dr. J making that kind of comparison that he could be that for the Sixers team. And we do know what he brings from an on-court standpoint. There's no doubt about the talent of Paul George. The 22.6 per games that he averaged last year, that 41.3% from 3 and 45.7% from the corner are the biggest things that jump out to me here. And that's going to be absolutely lethal when surrounding a guy like Joel Embiid, who commands so much attention with his 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, 5.6. And let's not forget about Tyrese Maxey here, who averaged 25.9 points of his own just last year. Now, when breaking down the schedule a little bit, I did want to dive a little deeper into what the back-to-back situation is. And to give my take on that, first pull up once again that they have 15 backs-to-backs on the season. This is where I think the Sixers have to put their money where their mouth is and prioritize keeping these guys healthy. And look no further than Joel Embiid for my exact reason, that he should not be playing in those 15 back-to-backs. He should be rested at least one half of each of those. That I think that should be quite clear in the plan going in. There should be no more of this uncertainty leading up until game time where we're a half hour before and we're still not sure whether Joel Embiid is playing or not, waiting for that final lineup announcement. I want that set in stone from the opening whistle this year. And we do have reasons for why that should be the case. For starters, there's a guy named Andre Drummond that will be joining this team, who very clearly will be ready to step into that starting center spot when Joel Embiid is not ready to go. And shout out to Drummond, who is just as happy as I've seen a player to be back in Philadelphia, in the 100th percentile in rebounding rate for both offense and defensive last year. Very cool to see how just excited he is. Shout out to him for kind of breaking the news with I'm in the mood for a cheesesteak when free agency first happened. This has been something we've drawn a connection to for quite some time. It was unfortunate that Drummond had to be traded away in that James Harden deal, but ultimately, welcome home, Andre, and I do think he's going to play a huge role in the Sixers team here. So I want that set in stone. And that also applies to Paul George, that I know that he had his fair share of injury concerns as well that has to be approached and acknowledged up front. And I want to see it from the Sixers, that I want you to come into a plan because the ultimate goal has to be for winning a championship, and you cannot ruin that in the months of December, January, February leading up to it. Make sure you have that set in stone. I think it should be acknowledged from day one of this season that Joel Embiid is not going to be an MVP candidate, that he is not going to reach that 65 game threshold. We're going to plan to keep him underneath it. He got his award. He's done it before. Now it's time to put the money where your mouth is as it pertains to winning. The best thing for the Sixers team is for Joel Embiid to not have to carry things on a night-to-night basis. Now, that is not to say that they do not need him, that there certainly needs to be plenty of time on the court in which we see this trio of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George, because they're going to have to figure out how to play together. That I do want to see Joel Embiid take a statistical step back this year. That there's just no way that it can translate to team success if he is producing this caliber of numbers. Leading the league in scoring for the 4th straight year would be the case this year. The 34.7 points per game is just absurd stuff. I wouldn't mind if he's talking about more of a 25, 12, and 6 type stat line, where let's get the playmaking up a little more. Let's use him a little more Nikola Jokic-like, where you're running dribble handoffs off him, more movement around Joel Embiid. That's what I want to see take a step forward this year. That Paul George and Tyrese Maxey can have the nights where they can take over. Sure, Joel Embiid is going to have his nights. We know how special he is as a talent, but that's what I want to see, is a little less Joel Embiid ball overall this year, and that is the secret, I think, to taking this team over the championship hump. So ultimately, you cannot win a championship in August, you cannot in September, not October, or anyway until we get to that point in the playoffs. The progression to that point in time needs to be this team to continue being figure out how to play together and making sure they are staying healthy for when the biggest moment matters. So very excited that the NBA is clearly showing their faith in the Sixers team. Once again, we're talking about 27 national TV games. That's impressive stuff for the team out of Philadelphia, and I do hope that they represent well in each and every one of those. But regardless, I will be there every step of the way to break things down, inching closer to when the season will start, and we hope we'll have basketball to talk about. Still got to wait on that final roster spot that needs to be filled for the Sixers team, so make sure to stay tuned for that. I'll be all over it whenever we have some news, but appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning into this video, and also shout out to Fume for sponsoring the video overall. Make sure you're clicking that link in the description to check out their products below, and smash that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.